Hello, good people of the internet. Hello, Green Day. Hello, Nano. And, yes. And both people new and old. So, I guess we got a bunch of people in chat. Give a few minutes for everyone to sort of arrive. But hey, welcome to what I have decided to call Web Wednesdays, which is a thing that I have to say now, because I decided that this is what this is called. Hang on a second. I'm going to move this down a little bit. There we go, so I don't look like a child. But yeah. So, really excited to get into these comics. These things on Webtoon. Couple of things just off the bat before I kind of get into this. Hello, Domagranate. But yeah, some things I want, just some initial sort of goodness, what's the phrase I'm trying to think of? Little housekeeping before we get into all of this. So like regardless of what I end up why am I having a hard time forming a sentence right now? But yeah, so making something like this, especially making something within the time frame that you guys had, is a feat in and of itself, right? Like there is, I cannot in good conscience say that any of these are bad. Not that I think that any of these are bad, but but there is sort of an understanding that I have that like this was done sort of at a lightning pace, and that comics aren't are often a team project. You know, you've got an artist, you've got a writer, you've got an editor, you've got all these other different things, and most everyone, I'm assuming, for the most part, was a team of one. So you're doing a ton of work in a short amount of time trying to meet these parameters for something. And so that is, everyone worked hard, so we all just finished. Yeah, right? Like this is just a massive marathon. So me coming into this, I am definitely keeping that in mind. I don't think that anyone did a poor job. I think everyone did it. I think all of these are great. From all the ones that I've read so far. The critiques that I have are what are just sort of come from like my understanding of comics as a writer and as someone who understands the format, and how you and what you guys are being graded on in terms of the competition. So any sort of like critique or comment that I have, just know that you already did a huge, amazing thing by finishing this. So please don't. I'm trying not to shitpost. I may get. I can be an asshole, so I may get a little nitpicky with stuff. But just know that you all have my utmost respect from the fucking get-go. So, yeah. So you guys are all amazing. You guys did amazing things, and I'm gonna talk about them now. All right. So I think what was the first one that I decided to do? Because this was all this all came in sort of as people submitted stuff for me to review. So let me double check my tweet so I remember. I remember what order it was in. Okay, the curse strings. All right. So, without further ado, and then we've got that. Let's see, order. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so the first one I want to go over. Boop. Whoop. Hang on. Move this over here. Haha, here we go. All right. Yes. Is Nicole Craft's The Cursed Rings. Now give me a second to pull up my notes. Actually, hang on. I'm going to Gonna move this over here while I adjust. Because I am so prepared, guys. I'm so prepared. I so know what I'm doing. This is just absolutely 100% a really professional setup. Oh yes, and this is not affiliated with Webtoon at all. This is just me going through comics and Webtoons that you guys submitted, and me critiquing them as an individual, as someone who, as someone who writes, as someone who does this, and someone who reads a ton of comics. So anything that I say has no bearing on the competition. Everything I say is not coming from Webtoon in any meaningful way. This is all just my opinion. But yeah, so let's. Oof. All right, and so we'll pull that up. Cool. All right, so I'll just leave this right here. Oh, actually, hold on. I'm going to read the description. Okay, so the description for this is: after saving the elven town of Semai from certain doom, 6 warriors find themselves cursed by forgotten alliance rings. The curse, do the biddings of the rings or die. Now on a perilous journey, they must uncover the truth of their homeland and slay the monsters therein. All right, so that's a really bomb-ass premise. My first sort of critique of it is that none of that is in the pilot. None of that is in this comic book or in this webtoon. I'm just going to call them webtoons because comic's a different format. Now this is because in here we kind of start in medias res of just no introduction. We just kind of see this group of people walking in a dark hallway. They, start talking, bantering a little bit back and forth, and then she freaks out, and then we sort of move on, and no context is given whatsoever. Now, that is not a bad decision by any stretch of the imagination. Starting off like that, especially with something that has like horror elements and stuff like this, it's actually a pretty good idea. I thought it was a really strong start. The only thing is that like there isn't enough context given in the rest of the webtoon for me to kind of understand what's going on or how any of this stuff works. So like, because like we have her freak out here, and then we have some people talking about it, but then like this is something that confused me, where it was like, she mentions that the rings are talking, and then she says, I hear them too. But she's the only one who's freaking out like this. And so that begs a bunch of questions about like, why is it her? Why is she the only one who's being affected? Wait, there are other rings, because there wasn't any sort of talk. Because like initially I was under the assumption that, that this was going to be, that this was sort of like a rogue sort of D&D party. She may be sort of a plot relevant person, like this may be something that only be happening to her. But the fact that it's like that everyone's afflicted with these rings sort of really begs the question of why is it just her? And there's nothing even alluded to as to why that answer is. It's just sort of confusing. It's just sort of like everyone's cursed, but she's the only one who seems to be really, really freaking out. And that was I found that more of a distraction than sort of a thing that created an interesting air of mystery. So that was a big thing about that. There is a lot more information that's given later on, like relationships with the characters, names, who they are, stuff like that, and that's great. But it happened so late in the story for me that I wasn't really thinking about those things anymore. And so when it came up, it just sort of felt unnatural for it to be sort of put there. That kind of stuff I would normally recommend to be a bit more front loaded. But the comic, this webtoon looks great. Like the style is really good. I love the sort of like anime sort of like Bishan and stuff going on here, and then she just freaks out and it's gross and it's ugly and little eldritch horror stuff. I love that. I think the disparity there is great. I would love to have seen a greater disparity there. I would have loved to see like some really freaky, gross, ugly stuff happen when the rings were doing stuff, because I think later on, I'll scroll down to where we get to the eldritch horror. Yeah. So we get to this thing, and like, yeah, and like this thing's horrendous. It is gross and just awful. And I wanted to see like this level of creepy the whole time, and it doesn't quite get there for me. And so like I would have loved to like sort of a bigger distance between those things. And then let's see. I love the the foot eye monster so much. Yeah, no, it's definitely great. He's definitely like super great. As far as the action goes, because this is an action series, the effects are great, like the magic and stuff like that. And there's a choice that I thought was absolutely brilliant. Just a brief bit of visual storytelling was these two panels right here of just the extreme close up on the eyes, because this, you know, like you see the red hair and purple eyes, so you kind of assume that these two are Calum Sky, this is the CTA reading. Hello. I'm in the middle of talking about The Cursed Rings by Nicole Crafts. So hello, thank you for joining us. But I was talking about these two panels and how just like I think that these are really, really great, these two right here, because we get to see, because this tells us a lot about like the magic, like what they're casting, what she's about to cast, and you know, and it just gives a lot of information with just some design decisions. And I think this is brilliant. This right here, these two panels juxtaposed together is brilliant, and you should be proud of yourself. This is a really great decision here. I'm going to look at my notes a little bit more. And I'll put on something cool. Let's see. I will say, though, that like while the effects and magic and stuff is really cool, the movements, the dynamic poses of the characters are pretty stiff. My guess is that Nicole, if you were in chat, that you don't have a ton of experience doing like action stuff. I think this style tends to, for my assumption would be, is that the style tends to lend itself to more of just like characters standing around and talking. And so while there's a lot of cool stuff happening, sometimes the characters seem a little bit stiff, and so that kind of takes away from the action a little bit. There's another sequence that I think is really, really cool. It's an action sequence. It's right here. So this, if anyone remembers, if anyone in chat was in the writing workshop that I hosted, and I talked about like using the scroll to your benefit, this is what I'm talking about. So here we have this great sort of image of stuff going on, and then we have her jumping, and then as we're scrolling down, we're essentially moving into a different panel, but it's all just one image, and then she has her flips, and then she lands right here with the explosion happening. And so these are, these in like a print book would be 3 different panels all broken up. But because it's Webtoon and it's one giant panel, then just as I'm moving, the fact that I'm moving adds motion to it. And because this is so very well laid out, where it's just, as you're moving, more information is revealed and you get a better sense of what's going on. Like, this hits really, really well. This just final scene with the explosion hits really well. And so this is fucking cool. I love this stuff. This is great. I want to see this all the time. There's a couple of examples from the other comics that I think uses the format really well, and I'm going to gash on those. But this in particular, just want to say, well fucking done, Nicole. This is really, really good. This is super cool. Okay, cool. Let's see. And then I look at my notes some more. Let's see. And what was there something else that I wanted to mention about this? Not exactly. Oh, the one kind of final thing that I want to mention, is there's sort of an inconsistency in tone that I wanted to touch on just a little bit. Mainly because I don't think it's landing to it's doing like the best that it can do in this story, because like we've got like this little cute mascot guy over here, and I think there's another point where he like jumps on an arrow. Let's see, where are we? Yeah, right here. So he just pops up on there and fires, and it's a cute moment. It's a cute little anime moment. Nothing wrong with that. It's really effective and cute and great. But when juxtaposed next to like the violence and the horror elements of this stuff, it feels a little out of place. And I think it's just mainly because it just sort like there's just not like he wasn't really established well enough, I think, for me to really sort of get that there's a mascot on this team, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. There's another part that I really want to point out, because I think that this is like if you had just moved stuff around, it would have been really, really effective. Okay, so here we have a door. Okay, so here we have a door. Oh, this is something I also wanted to point it out. So like you have your word balloons here, but they're covering up plot important details. So I missed what these were and that they were on the door until I scrolled later. Scrolled. Yeah, it is freaky weird stuff. This is great. This shot is just really cool. I love this. It's fucking creepy as shit. But like I didn't understand that those were a part of, that there were like holes in the door because of just how the word bubbles or word balloons cover them up. I didn't think that they were important. So when they become important here and they have to stick their hands in them, it was kind of a weird shock. And so that's just sort of like that was sort of a weird thing for me. But there's a moment here that's really great where everyone puts their hands in and they get stabbed, and then and then there's this little cute thing here, and then there's this sort of relief. And for me, this feels a little weird because this is sort of cute and nice and just kind of like a little bit of just a little bit of like banter between character moments. But right before that, we have this really freaky, horrifying moment. And for me, because it sort of takes away the tension of this for me, where you have this really freaky, like massive sort of just horror moment, and then immediately after it, you have sort of this cute little benign adventure D&D party stuff. And I think that the horror would have been a lot more effective if this had been moved after that moment, where you come in from here, which is just them investigating the door, and then everyone putting their hands in, and then having the moment, and then people having the moment, people reacting, and then you have this sort of cute little finger suck here, and then this little cute moment gets interrupted with a horror element, that really freaky horror stuff. That would have, I think, would have like really sort of driven home the kind of tone of the story, of just this mix of like fun adventure with this really dark eldritch horror stuff that's going on with it. But overall this was really good. I liked it. Like the only thing I would wish is that like I wish that there was sort of like a better divvying up of the horror and the cute stuff that was in here. But this definitely, all these things have what I would call good bones, which means that like the idea behind the stories are really good. Just sort of varying levels of executed. And so far this was great. So I really enjoyed this. This was The Cursed Rings. And I do wish that there had been more like sort of context put up in the front. But there's enough sort of like trope stuff. I'm like genre savvy enough to kind of get what's going on, but the text doesn't say a whole lot in the beginning. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, thanks for looking at it. But yeah, good stuff. I feel like there's a way that I could like transition more easily into something else, but instead, oh, well, you're welcome. Hopefully you find this useful because again, like I was saying at the top, this is like you did something really hard, and so I don't want to come in and be like, well, you didn't do a good job on it. It's like, no, you did a great job. And I think if there had been, if you know, like there had been more time or an editor or something, some of these things that I pointed out could have been, you know, seen and punched up or something. So by no means do think that you did a bad job. This stuff's awesome. I just have opinions about shit because I have opinions about shit. But this was the Cursed Rings. I recommend everybody check it out. And yeah, so this was Cursed Rings. All right, now on to the next comic. So awkward, so wonderfully and not super awkwardly at all. This is Daphne's Dragon's Valor. Don't. You actually did an amazing job here. So it's like, as their kingdom crumbles around them, decorated knight Sir Rowan Warfield steels himself to secure his king's escape, no matter the cost. So this is really fucking good. This is doing like all the things that I want it to do. The layouts are interesting. The pacing is great. This story is a really good example. This is just a cool moment where just the explosion here and then the cracking and then it just shatters into the next transition into the next panel. Oh my God. You can't do that in a comic book. You can only do that in a webtoon. Thank you for doing something cool and interesting. But this is also a really good example of sort of just like the keep it simple, stupid idea. This story has a cast of 3 people. It's got the prince, it's got Rowan, and then it's got some lady who we don't really need to know because she's an antagonist. All you need to know is that she's an antagonist. And it focuses on, you know, just their relationship and sort of like the last few minutes of it. And that's it. Like there's enough world building to know the stakes and that like a city's on fire and his kingdom is crumbling, and that's all I need to know to enjoy the story. And then it focuses on what it needs to focus on, which is him sort of saying goodbye to him, and that's it. And then the rest is just really cool action, and it's really effective. I think that this was great. So this is also a great like this moment right here is a great setup for a reveal later, where you know, where the prince refers to him as Rowan as father, because that because then this sort of raises a bunch of questions about like, who is this guy? What's going on? Is he actually his dad? What happened? You know, but and then he goes off, and then she shows up, and then fights happen. But then this gets paid off later down the line. I'm gonna come back to some of this combat stuff. But I want to make this point. So I need to go back. I need to find the little flashback. It's at the very end? Okay. Then I got to go further. Hit. Nope. Too far. Awesome. Okay. So then you have that moment where he refers to him as his father, and it just raises some interesting questions. Not enough to derail the story, like not enough to be more interesting, that the answers seem to be more interesting than what's immediately happening. But enough to be like, that's weird. And then we get an answer to it here, where it's just this little short flashback of him taking care of the prince. The prince dies. Keeps calling him by name, and at the very end refers to him as dad. So this is, I read these and I took notes. And so this little montage right here just adds a whole new layer of context to the fight that I've just been reading, to the first scene. Like, it recontextualizes everything that came before it in a way that is a lot more meaningful and emotionally impactful. So then when this happens, where he just, flips the fuck out and then just turns into this guy, and then a goddamn, dragon shows up, it like really, really hits home, and it is just amazingly effective. So that is just really, really good pacing. See, would it be better to view these a bit smaller so it resembles the vision you get on your phone monitor a bit more closely? Probably, but I'm not. But because this is on my, because one, I want everybody to see it, and two, this is on my computer, I'm not sure if there is a way that I can do that on stream. I know I read these on my phone because part of the criteria that was being measured was readability on your phone. And I'm not really talking about that in these because they were all pretty well readable on the phone. So like it wasn't it wasn't that huge. It wasn't like a consistent thing that I was seeing where people were like not getting the format of a webtoon. No, that is true. Well, I think it's not so much necessarily like looking best on a phone, because these still look great on a desktop. I think it's just designing around the scroll. That's true. The panels are longer on a phone. I will say that. Or you get a longer view on a phone than something like this. But it's still really effective. And I think the main thing with a webtoon is the scroll, is it's just sort of this motion. And if it's still effective on a desktop as you're going down, then you still did a good job. Another thing I want to talk about the layout of this too is that like there is a lot of really great use of interesting like panel breaks and stuff like that. Like right here you have the wing that serves as the border for this panel, and then we transitioned into this. Occasionally, just a black bar, because that's all you really, sometimes you just need a black bar. And then we have like this where it's breaking out of the panels and leaning into something else. And then there's a couple of moments here, like this, just sort of her standing out in front of the background is really great. And then during the fight, there is really cool. And this is really cool. And this explosion is really cool. But hold on, I want to talk about something really specific here. It is somewhere where she does the walk. The layout of stuff is really great, but there's this specific thing. Here we go. Okay, so she summons this water attack, and then so here's where it introduces, right? So there's the other attack, there's where he's missed, and that's where she is. And then her attack then becomes the borders for all these different panels as it serpents back and forth. And this was I thought this was a really cool decision, where you're taking something as a part of the scene and making it a part of the frame of the whole story and how you're seeing it, and how it's just serpentining back and forth. So like the fight is it's sort of turning the fight into a lens onto what you're seeing, where like what they're doing in the fight is sort of limiting what we can and can't see and what is important, which is really, really cool. And then it just sort of pops up out of nowhere, and then stab. Another thing too that was really great that I was this sort of a lot of sort of a serpentining back and forth with sort of like your eye line and different panels of just sort of like left to right, which is reflexive of the story, because he summons a giant dragon at the very end. And so like that also, so like this sort of serpentine motion and what we're seeing getting sort of paid off in this giant dragon moment right here, is also really, really cool. So it's like everything that you do is leading in, is adding to your story in some way, that means you're doing a really good job. Now granted, that's insanely hard to do and it's not necessary all the time. but is just really, really effective. And I really loved this. This was great. It came in, it broke my heart, and then it left, and then title card, and that's all it needed to do. So this was really good. I was very impressed with this. So Daphne, great job. Oh yeah, the stuff about like this sort of like paying off the dad stuff at the very end. I was not expecting that, and that did hit me. All right, next we are going over Nox Million's EndShadow. Yes. All right. And if you guys want, I'll stay after I've like talked about these. I'll stay after if you guys have any questions for me. And if there's anything like while I'm going over the comics, if there's anything that you want to say, just let me know. I will respond to it. But yeah, so shadows are the manifestations of one's inner darkness that exists to protect one from the harshness of the world. But this is a power that can't be left unchecked, which is why Jesper and Rex must seek out people with shadows out of their control to protect the caster and the world itself. So this description could be a bit more clear, I would say, because seek out shadows, because like this doesn't let's see, what am I trying to say exactly? That exists to protect one from the harshness. So like the manifestation of one's inner darkness that exists to protect the harshness of the world. So like this is a really interesting premise, where normally shadows are negative things in fiction, especially when it comes to like sort of stuff like this, where it's good guys fighting the monsters that go bump in the night kind of stuff. And the fact that like they're using that the manifestation of the inner darkness of someone is actually being used for positive gain is really good. But I think that this needs to be this kind of information is also a bit more the idea is a bit complicated, so it would need some more clarity of just like like defining what necessarily inner darkness is. I had to explain everything, so I just stuffed everything there. Not to be a sassy bitch, but I could tell. Like it's this all of this kind of read like you had like a vibe that you were going for, a really, really strong vibe, but didn't have the words for it, and so it kind of like teetered a little bit. And then this power can't be left unchecked. So it's like, so then this statement begs a bunch of questions of just sort of like, so does everyone have this power? Is it just special things? Is it people like having it manifest and then going, is it like sort of the X-Men, the mutant gene where like it activates randomly and then the Xavier people have to come in and like help them control it or something? And there's not a lot of context given. So while this basic frame of a story leans into enough trope stuff for me as someone who's genre savvy to kind of get what's going on, there in the text itself is not super clear as to what I should be what is important to me as the reader, what I should be listening to or paying attention to. And so it doesn't really help me kind of understand what I'm getting into. There's a similar problem in the beginning here. By the way, this all looks great. Inner darkness given form, while it's believed that they come into existence to protect you. So this phrase right here is not helping define the world, because this is a statement that begs a question. I was like, while it's believed that blah blah blah. But then the answer to that is such power is dangerous when in the wrong hands. So it's like, okay, well, it's believed to. Well, then what are they? Like that, that's sort of the conclusion that you come to. And when you see sort of like this is sort of like a call answer setup kind of a thing, or response to response kind of a thing, where this is setting up an idea that the story is going to play with, where it's like, well, it's believed that they come to protect you, like. Other people use it for bad. or something like that, you know. So you're just like, so then you're sort of setting up the dichotomy of your world of just like, this is a power, it can be used for good or bad, or it's assumed that it's there to protect you, but not everybody believes that, you know, some, you know, other stuff like that. This is a great like setup to then be answered later on in like your beginning, in the beginning sort of narration of what this webtoon is doing. But it doesn't do that. It just goes next. It just jumps to the next point without answering the questions that it raises. And so then it just sort of leaves you confused. It's just sort of like, some people think it's this. I don't know what we're supposed to think about it, but some people think that it's this thing. And so it doesn't give me any sort of clear, concrete understanding of what shadows are or what their relationship in the world, to the world is. And so like this story for me needed a lot of context. This needed a lot more like answers as to like what the world is, what these characters are, what they're doing in it, and what problems are they trying to solve, and or a clear description of those things. This is great. I fucking love this moment where it's just where this is the panel, or this sort of the border of the panel where he's just grabbing the crime scene footage, and then it just cuts to this. This is great. This is just sort of breaking a fourth wall moment right here. And I love this. I love this little moment right here. The shadows also do a really good, really cool stuff later on in the fight. Where they kind of like create really interesting borders for the panels. Let me see if I can find some examples of stuff. I mean, the use of shadow in this is just interesting to begin with. But let's see, where's a fight? Where's a fight scene? We're getting into some combat here. But yeah, I'm trying to remember. What scene was I trying to remember? Oh yeah, so like stuff like here, where like there's the attack, there's the dodge, and then from his shadow this, and then it comes back up here. Like this is really cool. This is really cool, where it just sort of disappears and then comes back, and then his fight, and then it's protecting him. And so like, and then this, where it's that, and then leads into this shot here, and then he gets attacked, and then this little break right here. Like all these are really cool. And then this stuff. And then, this is just some cool imagery here. I'm just saying this is cool right now. I'm not giving any sort of critique. But the idea of shadows as part of like a superpower, or like there's the sort of like battle manga format that this thing is evoking, is really interesting, and it can I think Nox, you're using it in the fight. You think you're using it to pretty great effect. This is something that I would say do more of, be more abstract with it, like figure out just like use these as like really interesting ways to frame the action or the different scenes and stuff. Even in like you do it kind of a little bit here in the in just like the normal walking around. Yep. Where like around the house. Let's see. Yeah, well, there's this little thing. And then like this, like where it's leading into darkness. This is a really interesting use of shadow and stuff. I will say that the layout of the house confused the hell out of me. Because like let's see, we get the exterior. Where is the exterior shot? Yeah, so we get an exterior shot, which is a 2-story house. And then your characters enter. And then someone comments about like the ground floor being, are there more rooms? Where it's like they're just in the foyer of a 2-story house. There's obviously more rooms, and the basement, and even though it is a secret basement, like the fact that there's like a basement entrance inside the house is a little weird. But granted, it's supposed to be weird, but it still struck me as kind of off. And then it's just like this weird, like sort of labyrinthian weirdness underneath the house. I think this would have been more effective, the sort of weird like endless hallway stuff that's underneath the house would have been more effective if you had taken like 1 or 2 panels to just sort of establish the interior of the house a bit better, to make it look a bit either more normal or like normal but run down or something like that. And then that definitely would have added to the weirdness of this stuff, rather than it just sort of being a question of like, is just the layout of this house weird, or is this like a specifically weird, creepy thing that we're engaging with? Oh, you cut out a lot of stuff. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see. I mean, like, you know, if it's not like, the trick is to sort of taking the things that give information, but also serve the pacing of the story. Because sometimes, you know, sometimes you need to establish something and it just sort of it sort of like slows down the pace a bit. And you just kind of have to make a decision of am I like making a decision for pacing, or am I making a decision for information? And that's just, you know, that's a conversation to have with yourself. So I wouldn't apologize. I'm just saying that something to keep in mind for future stuff is sort of keeping a mind on the space that your story's in. There's a good shot right here, and this is really good. But overall, this story, like I said before in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of context given for the characters or the world or how any of the logic worked. So the plot, the sort of like what the characters are doing, of showing up, monster in the house, you know, little girl in the house, red herring, girl is not the monster, the girl's dad is the monster, the sort of cop adjacent characters of these two guys, you know, showing up, fighting the monster, and then winning, you know, and then beating the day, and then also like showing a little bit, I think later on, where there's some like internal, there's some invasive thoughts that he has to deal with because of his shadows doing some creepy stuff. Like all of that is evocative of enough sort of genre stuff in this genre that I can get the sense of what's going on. So I wasn't confused while reading it, but the like what they're fighting, why they're fighting, the relationship between the two characters wasn't super clear, so I didn't have a lot of reasons to get invested in these characters' stories or care what happens to them. And so I, you know, so in I understand, let's see, only one episode is limited how long you're allowed to make one episode. It's really balancing. Yeah. No, and like you have like a minimum 60 minimum 60 panels. This is supposed to be a one shot. I mentioned this in the workshop. Like this has to do a ton of work. This has to do a metric fuck ton of work to kind of like, you know, like a pilot has so much to do on top of it having all these other restrictions of like, it has to be in this genre, it has to be this, at least this length, all this other stuff. So so definitely feel the struggle here of just trying to figure out what was important and what wasn't important to tell. And you don't have to give me a whole lot in the beginning stuff. You know, you just kind of have to give me like a solid character reason as to why. Like you need to establish the world and then give me like just a character reason, a character motivation for why these two people are here and why the story is paying attention to them. And that is kind of alluded at the very end with the main character. Oh yeah, here. This is a panel we wanted to talk about. It's just a wall. You know? Like, but the fact that you've established like the shadows being this, like, this is cool, but just like the shadows being this sort of this tangible thing in this world, and it's just breaking up, it's just breaking up this thing in an interesting way. This is really cool. This is really cool to see, and it's really interesting. But it's just shadows against the rest of the room. So you know, so that's really so that was just a really cool moment in the story. But yeah, and then you have this stuff where the shadow's starting to talk to him, you know, and another thing, because part of the going back to kind of the beginning where it's like it's the manifestation of someone's inner darkness, that's such a metaphysical concept that, you know, I don't necessarily know what that is. Like, is it like negative emotion? Is it invasive thought, like what this ends up being? Is it sort of like their darker impulses or something? You know, like it doesn't really establish rules or what I should expect about how these things should work. So there's just something a bit more clear later on. But then there's and then this was really cool too. I like this. But there is like right at the very, hold on, I'm just gonna skip to the very end here. And something where he's like, yeah, I just hope that you want him to like me. Like this is a great end. This is a really solid end for this story where you have all this craziness and then you establish that the main character, one of the main characters, went through something similar. But because it wasn't set up before, this doesn't feel like an effective payoff. This just sort of feels like a random piece of information thrown at us at the very end. And so if you'd kind of had something just a little bit earlier that was alluding to something, some sort of disaster, or some part of this aspect of the story, this would have been a stronger payoff. But it's still really good. But yeah, overall, it's very pretty to look at. There's some really cool like design and layout choices. And the idea behind it has a lot of potential, but I don't think but there just wasn't enough context for me to really get into and kind of understand what it is that you were trying to say in the story. Okay. And then next we have Ashes of a Yearning Dragon. This is by Empress Nano. This is in the flames of Phoenix wrath threaten to consume the world. A firefighter with a mythical secret stands to oppose him, but will the fighter be able to conquer the flames of love in his heart? Oh boy. So this is. Oh hey, thank you for submitting it. Yeah, no, again, great job. Like really great job. There, all this, everything that I say is just in desire of helping learn and helping make something, stronger next time. So here we have Nano's thing. This is, I really enjoyed this. Great use of color. The layout is really cool. Let me look at my notes so I remember exactly what I'm saying. So something that I do remember. So Nano, I do remember. Me reading it in a goofy voice. I'm tempted now. I'm tempted. But no, like the layouts and the action in this is really good. And like here, this is a shot that I really like, where you have extreme close up of the hand, and then you break the fourth wall here, and then you pay that off with him holding the side of the building here. This is great. This stuff is super cool, and you can't do that in a print comic. You can only do that here because of how you're reading it. And this stuff's really cool. So this was some good stuff here. The story is pretty straightforward. It's in that it's just thirsty firefighter man, has a romantic connection to this guy right up here, the little Phoenix Vermilion Bird dude. And then they're duking it out. I really love this shot right here, where it's the fire coming down, and then close, and then that, and then shooting up. I also like the glow of his ring right there, which will be paid off later. So it's just kind of like it's just sort of like watching. It's just a couple fighting. I mean, he's a thirsty firefighter, man. I love his shoes too. There's a lot of great use of like reflection here, where it's where like the double images in the water that are sort of like showing the two different parts of the past of these two characters and the present of these two characters, which I thought was really cool. Something that I remember you asking me during the workshop was about dialogue, when sort of like how to make characters sound more natural. They're getting a divorce and involving everyone in the messy divorce. Yeah, it seems to be. But like this is really good too, where he's like kneeling down and then the reflections. Like this stuff's really cool. But something I want to point out with this dialogue. Now, this is my personal just sort of breakdown of what of sort of like kinds of dialogue that you can have. And there is bad dialogue, there's effective dialogue, and then there's good dialogue. Yes, shoes. Wonderful, wonderful, like massive, like raised pump shoes. And so bad dialogue is confusing and translates no information. So like if anyone in chat is familiar with like The Room, there's a very famous or infamous, I should say, scene from that movie when Johnny like goes to the store and like buys some like flowers or something and then leaves, and the whole exchange makes oh hi Mark. Yeah, I'll just do this as Tommy Wiseau. Hello everyone. It's so good. There is no home for me to return to. Oh dear. But the whole exchange makes no fucking sense. It seems like the two characters aren't even talking to each other. Like there's no exchange of information. The only thing that we kind of like learn is what we see, which is that he's there to buy some flowers and then he leaves. Like it just it makes absolutely no sense. Hang on, let me see if I can. Hang on, hold on a second. Let me see if I can do something real quick. Do. Oh yeah, perfect. Oh, this is great. All right, so hang on. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right, so here we go. So this is what I'm talking about. It's only like 45 seconds long.
Red roses, please.
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was just fucking nonsense. Just here, what's up? Oh, I'm talking about dialogue. I'm talking about the examples of good and bad dialogue, and we just watched. There we go. We just watched a scene from The Room. Oh, hi, doggy. But like that whole exchange, like it was just it was like information. It was like almost, even though it was talking about like the moment, it was like competing information, and it's just not effective, and it's just confusing. And so that's bad dialogue. Bad dialogue just doesn't serve anything. It just sort of just there to confuse you. Effective dialogue is not bad, but it's not doing anything other than just giving information. So it's like, it's like when characters are sort of spouting exposition and like the only thing that they're saying is just information about what they're like, about like about what they're doing in that moment, or, like saying their feelings to each other or something. And then good dialogue is translating information to people while also revealing like character motivation and emotions. Here, most of the dialogue is effective. Which again, I want to iterate is not bad, but it is a lot of it is just like really, really direct and sort of like information based, where it's it's like, stop, don't hurt me, you're hurting me. Well, I'm hurting you because of this. Well, I don't want you to do this because of this. And like that, and so like the shift from like effective dialogue to good dialogue. Well, I don't want to say good because it puts a value judgment on there. But like just effective dialogue to like character-driven dialogue is a better way of saying it. Is sort of like taking that information of what they're saying and saying like that's what they're trying to say, and then considering the relationship and emotional state of the characters, and then sort of trying to fit it to their voice as best you can. So like this would be like all the dialogue on this, I would say, is like a really great like first pass, and then you would go back and then sort of consider how this person talks, how this person would express this information. So you have all the things that the characters are trying to say, and then you kind of put a layer on top of that of just like the character's voice, and then that's what it shifts it from effective dialogue to character-driven dialogue, in my opinion. And so most of the dialogue in this is mostly effective. It's just giving me a lot of information. Sometimes that's exactly what you need, just having like that really blunt and direct sort of informational thing, because then it just sort of really drives it home as to how important it is, or sort of how powerful the moment is in that between these two characters. But I think it happens enough time in here to where like it's a bit distracting, and you kind of want to get more of the character's voice in there rather than just information. Another thing that I would say about this too is that a lot of the important stuff that is going on in between these two characters is stuff that happened not in this story. So it's like, when I was a boy, I was treated like a monster. Sometimes you just kind of need to reference it, and that's fine. But protecting them from what I've become. We don't know what he's become. So fit a whole backstory into the single CTA. True. Like that is an incredibly hard thing to do. And that kind of comes down to like just sort of finding the most important things about what you're trying to tell with your story, and then just giving that information. Here, you're referencing a lot, like what they did to us. So who are they and what did they do? We have no idea, because that's not important to this story right now, what we're reading. What's important to this story is the breakup of these two characters and how sad it is because they're fighting. But this sort of vague stuff that he's referencing right here, that's all of his motivation. And so because we don't see it, or because it's not strongly established as to like what it is or why it's important, it just kind of, to me, it read like he was just sort of angry. It's just sort of like saying things because he's angry, like not that there's a really strong motivation behind it. So a lot of the more intense things that happen later on don't hit as hard because I don't have enough specific context to understand why it's happening. Here's a great panel of just some action, just dancing, just dance fighting in the air. This is all really, really cool. There's another thing, and like right here, this also I really loved this shot right here. Let's see, where is it? This progression is really cool, where it just starts here off in the distance, closer, and then bam. Great use of the sort of the scroll there. This is good too. So here's another thing I'm talking about, where it's just like you're referencing something that's not in the story. So it's like, why, after everything I've done for you, I gave up everything to protect you, yet you betray me for the people who did nothing but hurt us. Like we don't know what other people have done to them. We don't know what he sacrificed. We don't know what they had before, really. Well, we kind of do, because there's the flashback scene later that's coming up. But there's just a lot of specifics that he's referencing that I'm just like, that is just not here, that take away from the impact of those words. I know they're important because people don't like reference those things unless they're important, but I don't have an emotional but I have an intellectual connection to those ideas. I don't have just sad choking. I don't have an emotional connection to those ideas. And so how you get the emotional connection to that kind of stuff is by showing what it is and how it affected them, not just the sort of the end result of it. And this is just sad. Okay. This right here is my favorite panel out of the whole thing, because it just establishes a canon that Phoenix Man, I can't remember his name right now, but Phoenix Man just constantly has a fan in his hand all the time, like is never without a fan. And I think that's great. I think that's a wonderful character decision, and I applaud it. I think that this right here of just this character chronically having a fan in his hand is wonderful and hilarious. It's just so funny and so gay. And then this just with the hair flip and stuff, I thought that was really cute. With the rings, and something that I would have said, like with the rings and how they're important here. Huaisong and Windmaster, yes. With the rings, I would have loved to have seen these shown off more earlier. He has to keep cool somehow, yes. But like there are a lot of shots with the ring, like with the rings on their finger, but it's not like the focal point of the shot. It's just sort of present. And I would have used this as a visual to establish their relationship beforehand, and that way you can kind of like, you can sort of do this sort of shortcut of where you have the rings on their wedding fingers, so then you establish them as like, oh, these are people who are romantically connected, and then you can kind of like jump the gun, or you can kind of take out all the dialogue that explains, that is sort of talking about the relationship and where it got, where I can infer a lot of that just from the visual, and then from there you can jump to immediately like the sort of things that they're mad at each other about, and then you can start focusing on that immediate emotional conflict. And so you had this really great setup, and I don't think it was used to its full effectiveness. Still did a great job with it though. And then there's another. This is just one thing that I wanna talk about with like pacing. Is right at the very. So here we have. All right. So here we have like the fight. We have the flashback, and then it escalates to Chunyu. Yeah, where it's here, and then he's confessing his love, and then they kiss and smooch. And then this is really good too. Where like sword throat, and then normal. So what's going on here is like it's building tension. So it's like, all right, we'll go back a bit. I apologize if this is all over the place, but this is just how I do things. Let's see. Let's go back to the beginning of this scene. Okay, so we have this pulling the weapon further, pulling this further, getting angry, and so like it's building tension, building tension, building tension, building tension, building tension, building tension, and then release. And so we have the release of tension here. And then it's great. But then here you have something that's kind of like backstepping and going back to building tension, because now we're talking about killing him again, even after we've just released the tension from them kissing. And so this little scene right here kind of undercuts the catharsis of seeing them kiss. And then, because then you have to go back and do it again. So like if, so it's just a little bump in what was a really great landing. And then you have bloody sword, which I'll leave you to, you can think of what you will with that. I'm assuming that he's dead now, that they are now officially divorced. So like overall, like the core of this story is just these two guys and the fight that they're having. And so like there doesn't need to be a lot of external external like reasons as to why, like world building, because this isn't really about the world. This is about these two people. But there's a lot of references to the world and what it did to these characters and why they're in that position. And none of it's shown. So there's a lot of like missed opportunity to build empathy and emotional connection to the fight that's going on, rather than just seeing the kind of end result of it. It's sort of like, seeing a couple fight in a Walmart parking lot where like they're just going at each other, and with no context it looks like, wow, shit, those people are really mad at each other, or they're just crazy and have no idea that they're screaming this stuff out in public, or whatever nonsense that may be. But if you had been following them for the past like 6 months and saw like how they treated each other and the tension that was building and the problems that they were having and the things that weren't getting resolved, then that explosion in the Walmart parking lot would have a lot more sense, and you'd be more deeply connected to that. deeply connected to that. So, yeah, we'll just hang on these two smooching for a while. So yeah. So those are my thoughts on Ashes of a Yearning Dragon. It's just it was really great. We just needed more context, which I think is a lot of what people were kind of struggling with. Burn down the Walmart product. Well, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what these two would be doing. It'd just be a massive explosion. Oh, also, there's something that I thought was just funny. And that is this sort of like one man like fire hose thing, where you have his hose connected to this thing on his back, the fire extinguisher on his back. I think that's super funny because wait, is it connected or is it just on his back? No, let's see, is anything connected? Well, kind of, I guess. But I think it's funny because like these don't shoot water; they shoot like flame retardant foam. And so like, so when I saw this and I saw that he was spewing water, it's connected. Yeah. So when I saw this and I saw that it was spewing water, I was just like, why is there like it just sort of made it, instead of being a fire extinguisher in my brain, it turned it into like a seltzer sprayer or something. And I thought that was really funny. It's still it's a cool idea to have like this sort of like self-contained, like super pressurized water pack that he's running around with. But the fact that it's like very clearly a fire extinguisher, like, and I have a little bit of an understanding of fires. Oh, I know. That's why I thought it was funny, is that you should be spewing white foam on everybody. So like, I get what it's evoking, but I just thought it was really funny. All right, and then the last comic I want to talk about today was more of oh yeah, no, I got it. It was just I just pointing out because I thought it was funny. All right, so we are talking about Sleeping with the Fish with Claudiius Viiridian. So it says the ongoing feud between the sea folk and the land folk has reached a breaking point. The Land Council has created a team of superhuman secret weapons as a means to end the war. Caesar, Meerkat, and Shiloh are an inseparable trio who were sent out to destroy the fish people once and for all. Will their friendship hold up through these difficult times? The answer to that question is yes, because this is super goofy. So again, like we have a story here that's got a great setup and a great premise, but there's some sort of like what am I trying to say? There's not a whole lot of context given for what's going on and like why I should care, and the context that we do get isn't super clear. So we have the three of them just sort of talking about a mission where no one's supposed to die. I love this right here. This is just super pretty to me, and I think I just love this little thing right here. And then we have sort of this explanation, this very sort of direct kind of exposition here, which is fine because you need to establish like what's going on. But and I love the design of the masks where it's just the ichthus but just on its side. I think that's really great. But then let's see where's so here. So we have this guy with a horse head for whatever reason. Doesn't necessarily need an explanation, but it was sort of startling. But there's a bit of dialogue here that's supposed to explain the trio. That isn't super effective, that I want to point out. All right, so so it's not just any kids. I've raised them to have unexplainable power, power that neither of you could hold. So this is a redundant phrase in the in the dialogue here, because unexplainable power just this is already saying what this is saying. I did notice like it was quite a common thing, a lot of CTA entries. Yeah, like that's I think the biggest I think that's like kind of like the biggest, only or not the biggest. I think that's like the main consistent sort of like shortcoming that I think a lot of these have, is that there's not a lot of there's either like not enough or not very effective context that's given for these stories, which again, you know, like these were, you know, everyone had to come up with these in like about a month or something like that, month, 2 months, something like that. Like it is a lot, unless you already had a lot of this already fleshed out, you know, like if you already had something in your back pocket and worked on this stuff, like coming up with this is hard work. And the fact that everything was able to come together for the people who did make these is still amazing. So, you know, so I'm not ragging on anyone when I point this stuff out. But then it goes and says the three of them are unique in their own way, but can work together as one. This phrase right here, like this phrase means nothing. This is just sort of saying that like an apple is red and is also crunchy. Visually, like this information's already there. And the fact that and contextually, because they're talking about like a team of people as secret weapons, like we can infer all of that information, and this word bubble does not need to be here. Like what's being said here has already been established visually, so he's just sort of reiterating information that's already obvious to people. What I needed here was just you know, like was a better answer to this question is like, are you serious? And it's just like, yes, these, like, you know, they have raised them to have unexplainable power. That's kind of all he needed to say. Like you could just take these out and it would have hit, and it would have hit probably a lot better than just him kind of repeating the sort of obvious stuff that he says later. And that would have been just fine. To me, this sort of reads as like wanting to give context, but not wanting to give too much away, and you end up just kind of being vague. And this is sort of a problem throughout this webtoon, but it's specific, but it's like most obvious in this little exchange right here. And I just kind of wanted to point this out of just, this is sort of just like a little clunky right here. Another thing that I noticed about this is some like this is a really fun, goofy story, for as violent as it is. And there's a couple of moments with the lettering that I don't know if these are intended jokes or not, but like you know, like burn as an onomatopoeia, or burn right here, like that. You know, that you don't necessarily need to put like the literal word there for the lettering to work. You know, just like there's like lists, I think, of onomatopoeias that you can look up that are, you know, just like hiss and things like that. But because it is the literal word, to me, it registers as like, oh, this is supposed to be kind of like a joke, where, you know, like choke and then slice, where it's like where it's sort of like literally pointing out what's going on. And I think that actually could be really funny if it was just sort of like leaned into harder. Like if choke was bigger and more obvious and more bombastic, if slice was like really bloody and gross or something, like that could really make this, you know, really evoke this sort of idea of like, oh, this is supposed to be like fun violence. This is supposed to be fun, goofy violence. And the reason, and I think that because like later on, as you know, like this character, like Meerkat especially, or like right here, you know, there's like dead, you know, like you could have had so much more fun with the lettering on here and made it into the joke of what's going on, or just like Meerkat getting really excited about tearing out eyes and stuff. It seems like the story's leaning into that idea of it being just the sort of like goofy, fun, hyper violent nonsense. And I just don't think it went far enough for it to like really, really hit effectively as it all being jokes. And so I would have loved to have seen like a stronger commitment to those types of things. What's the second genre of this one? I don't know. I actually didn't look up. Hang on. Let me... action sci-fi. So I don't... It could also not have been intended. That's the other thing too, is that like it could have just kind of been whatever it was, and that this is supposed to be like a serious story with some goofy elements. But I saw this as like a really great potential for comedy. And I would have loved for like Meerkat especially is just super goofy. And so, this was a lot of really good stuff in here that it was just sort of executed kind of wonky. And I think if there was just like a stronger, I think what this was kind of struggling with was like a sort of a lack of clear vision in the story that it like the literal stuff of the story was pretty well fleshed out, but how to go about telling it and executing it, I don't, based off what I've read, my assumption would be that wasn't super clear and it was just like being made up as they went along. And let me look at my notes just to make sure everything's going on. Yeah, so that is, I expected to go a lot longer on these, but it seems we've got these done in a little over an hour. So these are the 5 that I read. The Cursed Rings, Dragon's Valor, EndShadow. Hold on, let's just go. EndShadow, Ashes of a Yearning Dragon, and Sleep with the Fish. And overall, all 5 of these were really great. They looked great. They were fun to read. Just some things that were just like things to be like issues to be expected of the kind of competition that this is, and that like there's not a lot of time, so there's not a lot of stuff to like, there's not a lot of time to flesh stuff out. Awesome. I'm glad that you guys learned some stuff. Oh, well, thank you. But great entries. Nothing boring, nothing bad, nothing mediocre. That's the other thing too, is that I personally have an irrational disdain for mediocrity. It is unfair and it is not rooted in reality. But God damn it, dude, I hate mediocre anything, and none of this is mediocre. This is fun for me. This is an excuse to read comics and stuff. I'm also glad because like doing the workshop and seeing how some of the stuff was implemented is really cool. What defines mediocre? That's a good question. Mediocre is, unfortunately, I have more definitions of like what. Not anything sort of specific as what it means, but it's for me, mediocre is sort of meeting the base. You knew that would stump me? Well, apparently you were psychic. For me, the definition of mediocre is meeting the bare minimum requirements and having no ambition to go beyond it. Like to only do what you need to do and nothing more. Because sometimes all you need to do is just the bare minimum to get something done. Like an aspect of something great can have mediocre bits in it. But for the whole thing to just be something that is only ticking boxes and is not doing anything, and is not trying to do anything interesting, is mediocre to me. Now that's not, I don't think that's a great definition of mediocrity, but that's kind of my my sort of initial my initial take on those things is like if it's just doing what it needs to do, right? Like if it's just 60 panels and it's just a handful of scenes of people like swords bonking next to each other or something like that. If it's just someone yelling what is needed to be said to get to the transition to the next panel, then that's just mediocre. But all of these stories, right? Yeah, mediocrity is subjective. It is really subjective, and not everybody thinks that it's a bad thing too. Like some people think that mediocrity is sort of like a neutral. It's not necessarily negative, and that like being mediocre is sort of like a transitory period from from being like bad to mediocre to good. For me, like even if you fail at like good things can be shit, like so long as there's like a clear attempt at trying to do something different, and sort of having an understanding of how comics work and like the effort and time needed to put into stuff like this. I have an understanding of like what goes into a comic. Enough understanding of what goes into a comic to know like what if someone's just doing what they need to do or if someone's actually trying to do something interesting. Can be more entertaining. I mean, that's true, but I think that's like depending on your definition of mediocrity. But yeah, so any questions from the audience? Any questions from am I an editor? No. I'm a writer. I write for Crunchyroll as a contracted script adapter. So, but no, I am not an editor. I'm just someone who really loves comics and wants to make them at some point. Has not had the means or opportunity to. So I've done a lot of studying on what comics are and what goes into them and how to write them and stuff. So I just have a lot of information. But yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else? I'm gonna look over my notes again real quick. Is there anything else that I wanted to mention about anything that I wrote about or that was read? No, that kind of covers everything I wanted to talk about. If you hear daddy jokes in an English dub, it's probably James. Fair. The angel saying "Just do it." Oh, it's not so much a "just do it" as it's like I can't. It's just like I'm not an artist, and so I've tried to team up. I've multiple times I've attempted to accomplish something, but it hasn't. It ends up falling apart before an end product gets made. And so I then shifted my focus to stuff like acting and other things, and I've recently gotten pretty successful with those, and so but comics have always been my first love, and so it's not so much of not doing it as it is things not coming together and then shifting priorities. Well, now you know how you can send more entries in each of these streams. That's true. I can talk about more stuff. But yeah, no, I've snuck in some pretty some pretty cursed jokes into some shows, which I'm very, very happy about. So like those who are still in chat, did you guys like how I handled this? Would you want me to do more of like a recap of the stories or the comics before getting into them, or just like diving in? Because I'm assuming, because I'm going to post about these earlier for next week. This one this week it kind of snuck up on me, but I'm going to post them. Okay, awesome. But yeah, I'll post them probably Monday, so everyone has like a day or two to read them before I go over them. So I'm kind of coming in assuming that people in chat have already read or already familiar with these stories. But would you guys want me to like do a sort of a recap beforehand? I've read all of them coming into this. Cool. wasn't able to give 100% of my attention. Did I read through them? No. This is just a review. I read them all prior to the stream. Reading through or doing a recap might be useful. Okay, I'll try and structure in like a recap of what's going on, because I don't want to just like in the future. I think a brief recap would be helpful for people who haven't read it. Okay, you just kind of showed up. Okay, yeah, all right. So then I'll work in some kind of recap then for the next episode. But yeah. So let's see. Apart from Lux, who I had already read. Okay, cool. All right, then yeah. So I'll give people more time to read, and then I'll just like do a recap of the story of each one before I get into talking about it. And I'll probably end up writing something out, so I don't have to like improvise something on the top every time I go in. Let's play a game. What genre do you think the creator? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, that's right. You mentioned this, and this sounded fun. So what genre do I think each creator do for their main comic? All right, so for the curse rings, based off of just art style and design, my guess is that Nicole does a sort of like anime romance thing going on. This, like given how the characters are designed and how they're and just sort of and like the fact the positionings are kind of just sort of stiff is not the word I want to use, but just like there's not a lot of action lines in the characters how they're laid out. I'm assuming that she draws a lot of people just sort of standing around talking. So my guess is that she doesn't do a lot of action. And that it's mostly like romance, like fantasy romance or something like that. That would be my guess. Then for Daphne and Dragon's Valor, again, more like anime inspired, but there's a lot of like long hair and pretty boy stuff. So I would assume, maybe not. The action stuff is pretty solid though. Nicole, fantasy romance. Yay, got it right. I'm assuming. Well, if the creators in chat, you can correct me, or you can answer. I'm assuming here. My guess is like BL or something. Yeah, same. Like my guess is romance here. But that's just because of the pretty boy face and long hair. So that's my. I have no idea if I'm accurate on this or not. Because I would normally just assume like slice of life. Wish it was BL, fantasy action dark fantasy action drama. Okay. She wishes it was BL. All right. I mean, that's definitely. Yeah, I think in like the notes. Let's see. I play this game with every time I want to see what you'll guess. Okay. But I think in like the very end, I think in the notes you said something. Where it was like this was like a scene from something else that you weren't able to do or something like that. I can't remember, or maybe not. Maybe I was reading something else. Oh yeah, here it is. Actually, one of the many scenes I ended up cutting from my main comic. So yeah, so like, so this is just a piece of your normal comic, which is Lycros Rising, which is dark fantasy action stuff. So yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. EndShadow, Nox, based off of your style, my guess is sort of like slice of life high school drama stuff, maybe some supernatural elements in there. That's my initial guess. But let's see. Do you have another? Which is sci-fi comedy. Okay. Really fit in the rest of the story. I tried writing it more romancy, but it just got bad. How to romance? I don't know. Sci-fi comedy stuff. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, the sci-fi. I think the sci-fi especially. Like with the design decisions and stuff. I think that makes sense. No, I know what you do, and that's gay. You make gay. You make pretty boy gay inspired by Asian mythology. That is what you do. I know this. This is not a question. See, Claudius. Based off of my guess is comedy. Actually, I think that that Claudius does maybe action comedy stuff, but my initial guess is comedy. And this is fantasy, action fantasy. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'd have to read it more if there's like comedy, if there's like a comedy bent to it or not. I was not expecting something a bit more. I was not expecting something serious. I was expecting a bit more goofy. But I was off on Claudius. So cool. So yeah, those are my guesses, and those are the answers to what I thought everybody did. Based on the profile pic, I thought it was like some goofy comedic thing. But yeah, so this is let's see. I mean, there's only 2 genres that it can still be comedy under the hood, right? Like, yeah, like you'd have like that feels like something where it's like, yeah, it can be a dark fantasy, but is it like, but is it like a dark fantasy comedy? I don't know. There may not be enough hyphenates to put in there. Well, awesome. I'm glad that everybody had fun. I had fun. I certainly enjoyed reading everything. So tune in next week for another romp through the Webtoon call to action entries. I will be posting lunch. I will be posting the next round of Webtoons on Monday. So check out that for the next week. Only once a week I could listen to this more. Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, no, I have others. Well, here's the thing. I do other streams on this channel. I do, granted, most of them are related to sort of orbiting Heaven's official blessing, or Heaven official's blessing. But I'm doing reviews on the C drama, The Untamed, and the Mo Dao Zushi Donghua. Those 2 are review streams. Tomorrow, I do a stream with my brother called Playing with Guys and Dolls, where he and I are, where my brother and I are currently playing through Spider-Man Miles Morales, and that's just like a really goofy, fun, unhinged time. And then so Thursday is that. Friday and Saturday are reviews of the TV series and the animated series, and then Sunday is I do a solo stream where currently I'm playing through Cyberpunk, and so that's just sort of a solo stream where I hang out with people. And also, if you guys subscribe to the Twitch channel, you get access to the Discord, which as of right now is pretty heavily Danmei MXDX themed, but that's where I do watch parties for the episodes that I'm going to be reviewing later in the week. So I watch it with everyone. I watch the episodes of The Untamed, and I watch the episodes of Donghua with everybody. Speaking of which, after this, I'm going to go and be watching it with everyone. So if you guys want more content from me that's not necessarily educational review stuff like this, but just sort of hanging out with me, you guys can come in later in the week and I'll entertain you. Bought the game, never played it. It's really good. Like, Cyberpunk is actually really solid. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. But yeah, so I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow, or at the very least, I'll see you guys next week. This is the the first Web Wednesday, and this will go for as long as it needs to. Oh, thank you, Nana. All right, well, I will see you guys later. So, bye.